All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. I am so grateful you have chosen to listen to me and to go on the travels and see the things and go to the museums that we have managed to go through for the last 2 seasons. I have really enjoyed doing this podcast, and I hope you stick with me. It makes me happy to know that people are enjoying what I do. On another note, I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are on Facebook at Where Am I to Go podcast. We have lots of pictures. We have places that we go that we don't do podcasts on. And we have lots of things to see and think about when you decide you're going to travel, or if you're just interested in learning about different places that we go. Also, we have an email account at whereamitigopodcast@gmail.com. And if anybody has any comments, ideas, thoughts, you are more than welcome to email me there, and I will do my best to answer. And we'll see where everything goes this season. I've got some neat things lined up, and I hope everybody is ready to go for a museum tour ride. Today we are in Marfa, Texas, and I don't know if anybody really knows much about Marfa, but there's a phenomena here that they call the Marfa Lights. But there is also a small museum, or it may be a large museum. I haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet.
Holocaust.
It's a Holocaust and shipbuilding museum is the way it is billed. And I've been talking with, I never even got your name.
Kim Thornsberg.
Kim Thornsberg, okay. Now I got your name. I walked in and we started carrying on a conversation, and I don't know if we were even properly introduced. But Kim has some stories that are going to blow your mind. I've been sitting here listening to him for about a half hour, and I need to turn the player on because I'm missing way too much. You guys had better get ready, because this is going to be one interesting podcast. I have no idea where it's going to go, and Kim even said that I could say a lot of people are going to think he's out there and a little bit wacko, but I'm ready to hear what he has to say, and I'm excited about this podcast. Welcome, Kim, to Where Am I to Go podcast.
Thank you. Enjoying this. They're going to enjoy it.
Oh, I think they will. So anyway, we were just talking about the Marfa Lights, and you said you had a story about the Marfa Lights. Let's get your story.
All right. First of all, let me say that here in Marfa, I came in 1951 as a little baby, and Marfa Lights were well known before that. So it was absolutely a phenomenal event when I grew up. We have about 16 miles east of Marfa, there's an old Marfa Army airfield out there, and in World War II it was the largest training bomber base in the world, and that's where the lights were. So they shut the base down in 47, and we got here in 51, and I wasn't, till 56 or 7 before I started realizing what was going on. But my dad was involved in that. The Army never left that base. They always triangulated, trying to find out where these lights were out there, because that's what shut the base down. Everybody in Marfa, they all know the lights. Then only the old Hispanic ladies will tell you the truth, what they literally are. The rest of the people, they think scientific knowledge and all this kind of stuff is more important, and it's all baloney. We're talking about NASA. We're talking about every major TV production of Germany, Japan, China, anywhere you want. They've all come here, and not just once. And they all say it's natural. There's nothing natural about these lights at all.
Okay, can I ask a couple questions? First of all, can you explain the lights? And the other thing I'd like to bring up that's a point with what you just said, the first sighting of these lights was in 1896 or 1868 or something. Is that correct? I mean, long before artificial light.
The ranchers saw these lights, but the Apaches are the ones, they saw the lights. They knew them very well. They communicated with them. Now, how in the world do they communicate with them if they're just natural phenomena? What do you communicate with St. Elmo or what? No, they knew. But these particular lights here go all the way back to Noah or even before. And
Really?
I have that in writing.
Wow.
So nobody has this in writing. No one has any idea that the militaries in the world, they know all this stuff about flying saucers, and maybe they meant all these crazy creatures, but they know nothing compared to the Jewish sages. They wrote everything down. And I know that because I got their books. And we've had, I don't know how many rabbis came to see our museums, and then my wife hauls them in here, and they looked at that, and they said, even in the synagogues, we've never seen a library like this. But boy, did I get some books that tell everything that happened back in Noah up until now. Not just the book of Enoch. This beats the heck out of Enoch. So that's where I got all my information from. And they're right on. Absolutely. But these lights here, they're called shades. And they're the most famous of all the ETs, if you want to call them that, in the Jewish scriptures. So, but nobody knows that except the Jews. And they're not allowed to talk about it. So I probably, my wife's telling me, be careful, there's things you're not supposed to talk about. But
are you Jewish?
No.
Okay, so
No.
you just studied the Jewish tradition.
Well, we're Noahides. We've been studying Judaism for 15, 20 years or longer.
Okay.
And I did all that just so I'll have this museum. I'll know able to talk. I get so many people from Israel here, I have to know what I'm talking about. And the museums come too, some of them. We'll get in that later.
Okay.
Okay, now the lights. I have a book here that I wrote 8 years ago when I moved back to Marfa. And it's called, because I realized it was still a very, very popular place. And that's the number one caller. I mean, thousands of people come here. Every night you go out there, you have anywhere from 50 to 300 people standing out there at that viewing site. And so this is the bestseller in Marfa for the last 8 years. The next bestseller is my book that I wrote on that museum. I have them in there. So I'm doing very well here. Ask me why. I do very well. Yeah, I don't sell these books anywhere but here in Marfa. So,
Really?
but I don't like thick books, as you can see.
Right.
I go to the point.
Yeah, but Kim, you get mail order requests from all over the world.
Well, that's true. And I get, there's so many things that are happening. We don't have time for all that. There's a lot of very good things happen here. Good, very good things happen. But still, I don't do interviews anymore with this. I will. But I don't do interviews with these scientists from all over the world because they just don't have any idea what's going on. I don't care. Education has nothing to do with it.
Well, they just think it is a gas.
Yeah, they don't agree with it. They don't believe in it. But the NASA engineers, all those guys come out here, they all say, "Oh, it's plasma. It's this and that and this and that." Well, I ought to take them out there on the ranch. There's a ranch that I went to for how many years did I go out there?
You could take this lovely couple out to the mountain tonight.
If we can get out there, but if they just show up. But if they do, they'll scare the you-know-what out of you. You will not exactly what you're thinking. Even though there are dinky little lights out there, for 8 years I pulled people out there until they did something to the couple, and I stopped.
I want to go.
He does.
I do. I really want to go.
Well,
if you get to go, it is an unreal experience.
You'll love it.
Scares the holy bejubies out of me.
Even if we don't see.
You know what? I thought all this Marfa Lights stuff was nonsense and hooey-fooey. But not anymore.
All right.
This is Kim's wife that's also
Yes.
here with us.
I have, and I'll show it to you when we get in there. I have a AAA magazine article, 1918. They did it on this man, Mr. Shirley, and myself, and what we were doing out there, and people from all over the world. From January 1st, 1918 to April 29th, I took hundreds and hundreds of people out to this volcano. We're well over a mile high, and it just so happened his ranch is where there's a Air Force base here called Dyes Air Force Base in northern Texas. They're the ones that train B-1 bombers. And those B-1 bombers, their training site is his ranch. That's where they train.
Kim, your dog is barking.
And at night, they fly over that mountain we're on, and they're refueling, and the people go nuts. It's just incredible, and they're very low. So the satellites, it's full of satellites out there. So anyway, but when the lights come up, the people, men and women, not what they expected. And they run for their lives coming back to Marfa, the Border Patrol station. They did pull their guns on us. They're screaming so loud they want to get the heck out of here. I'm telling you, it can be very, very traumatic. And,
okay, now you were saying 1918. Was that the correct year that you were?
No, did I say 1918?
You said 1918.
No,
and you said that
2018.
You were saying you were taking people, and I just
2018.
2018. Okay.
Boy, that would have been fun. 1918.
I was going to say you're one of those that's been through the Stargate too many times.
Well, I get excited when I start talking about this, but because I don't really talk to anybody about it, because they don't accept the things that happen. Anyway, so I don't know where we were, but let's just say that Army airfield out there, nobody knows here. Here, I'm in Marfa, and all these ranchers that talk about the lights and everything, they have no idea. I would ask them, why did they shut that base down? Oh, well, the war ended, and that's why they shut it down. Why would they do that? That is the best flying. You get the military people that flew there, they got more military hours flying than any base on the entire earth. This is the best spot on the planet for flying airplanes. They had the World Soaring Meet here, and I had nationals many times, but in 1970, the World Soaring Meet was here, and they only did it one time because they couldn't afford coming here anymore because it's the best place in the world to fly. You're in a volcano right now.
Okay.
You're in the largest known volcano to man. You can put 2 Yellowstones in here. You got 300 miles circumference and 60 miles in crest to crest. And there are many volcanoes that are around us, but this one is huge. But the key is what's underneath us. We have the largest inland ocean of fresh water on the earth, and nobody knows how deep it is. Well, hold on just a second. Watch this. Yep, took care of that. Now.
Okay. You've got the largest
inland ocean of fresh water
underneath
us right now.
Okay.
The lights that are involved in this story here in Marfa, they're called third category UFO lights, and they're called Foo Fighters, and the name of them are called spheres of many colors, and that's it. And they're all over the world, but their hubbub is right here. Right
really?
There, right out there, where that base is. And you can't get out there on that base. Now it's owned by a New York lawyer, and he won't let anybody out there. So now I tell you,
how often do the people that go out to the rest area or the pull-off area? You said there's between 50 and 300 people each night. How often do they see the lights? Every night?
Maybe 50% of the time.
Really?
But they don't see anything super spectacular except maybe once or twice or 3 times a year. I mean, when I say spectacular, very spectacular. But so spectacular that they run for their lives. And that's recorded. That's all been on national television, what happened out there in 2010.
Wow.
But it's nothing compared to that ranch south of here. They're out there 50% of the time too, but I'm telling you. Yeah, too bad we can't grab those people and bring them back and let them tell you themselves what happened to them. But anyway.
Okay, so tell me about your experience.
Let's do this.
Story.
Now, well, let's start at the beginning of the book, and I'll go as fast as I can. Here we go. When I was 14, I told my dad, I'll get my license at 14. I said, I want the car that night. I want to drive out there to the Marfa Lights, because that base, it was a civilian base now. They only had one hangar, but the lights were still there. And I wanted to go out there and walk by myself at night to the southern end. And so, Peggy, that's got to be unplugged. Pull the thing out. So I went out there with the car. I parked it. I got about maybe, I'm going to guess, let's just guess 300 yards. And there was a full moonlight. And one came up. Instead of being 15 miles away, it was about maybe 50 yards away. It was right there in front of me.
Wow.
A full moon. I could see ants on the ground, but it came up very slowly out of the ground, and it got maybe about 6 or 7 stories high, a sphere. It was huge. It was white. But out of it came many colored ones, smaller ones like Saturn. They flew around it. The colors were orange, blue, red, green. Those were the only colors I saw. But they were flying around it. They went back in the main one, and then it went back, took a sweet time going back in the ground, and just gone. And I couldn't move. Now, I was afraid, yes, but those colors, God, they were beautiful. Nobody would have moved.
Really?
They just took over your soul. They were so beautiful. They had to be from supernatural realm. I've never seen anything like it before. I'm not the only one that says that either, because I saw many of them out here. So anyway, but I ran to school, and the next day, 2 of my friends there, one of which is the owner of that ranch. And he said, "You were white as a ghost," and everybody, I wouldn't even talk to him. They said, "Well, something happened." Billy Christopher was the other one. And as I said, "Listen," I said, "I went out there and I saw something, and I can't even begin to tell you what happened to me." So I put that, but I never went back out there. And lo and behold, now I played in the hangar like all the boys did. It was an aviation field, it still was. But they still had World War II planes in there. Remember the Doolittle raid?
Right.
Well, there were 24 planes, but only 18 of them got on there. The other 6, what happened to them? And I've asked Doolittle, they have Doolittle clubs that come here, and I talked to them, what happened to the other 6 planes? Oh, no, they were destroyed. No, they weren't. I played in them. They had them hangared here, 3 of them at least, and we played them as kids. They took them over there to where they found Enola Gay. That's where they had those 3 planes, and where'd they go? And then you had Fat Man over there. They lied. They said, "Oh, no, there was Fat Man wasn't over there." Yes, it was. And they got a museum over there all about Fat Man being over there. Pyote. Okay. If you like history, go to Pyote. That was the largest military base ever built. And it was considerably larger than Davis Monthan, where they have all the old planes out there. This thing was huge, and it's still there. So anyway.
And they got a museum there?
In the town that does.
Okay.
It's a small little museum, well worth going to. So, what I'm saying, it's there, so they can go check it out themselves and see the photographs, everything. So there's a big military area right here. Now, so I'm going to move on because we don't have all day for this. So all right. I eventually, after Vietnam was going on, I was in college, all that kind of stuff, and I had a low draft number, so I had to sign up. So the Navy at the time, you have like the Navy SEALs, the Green Beret, the Rangers, all these special units, all the militaries.
Right.
Well, the Navy aviation, they had what they called the AVROC program, and but they only opened it during time of war, only for a short period. And anybody can get in that. These guys, we took tests and everything. We scored, whoever scored the highest, you know how they do SAT test kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay, that's how you got into it. But you got paid very well. You went in your summer, your junior year of college, and you went back to college, and you came back. You had to go to boot camp twice. Well, I got in that program. But they didn't tell us we were going to boot camp twice, and they sent us to Marine boot camps. They didn't send us to the Navy, and they killed some of us. It was horrible what they did to us. So most of them never came back the second time. They just went regular Navy. But anyway, so I got through that program, and then when I got my wings, Vietnam was just winding down. So what'd they do? The Coast Guard, they don't train their pilots. They don't have academies for aviation. They grab usually Army helicopter pilots. They're the best. That's who they grab. But for some reason, they grabbed 6 naval pilots, and I was one of the 6. And they sent me to Houston. It's at Ellington Air Force Base. It's a big old air base there.
Okay.
It's between Houston and Galveston. So I'm just telling that so they'll know where it is. So they sent me there. And I was on duty one night. I just got there, didn't know the pilots that well. I was just a young kid, 24. And we're on duty. There's 2 of us. And what happened that night? It's never happened in the history of Houston. Never happened in the history of the Coast Guard. And what I'll tell you, it's never happened to anybody, any military pilot on the world. It only happened this time. And that I was the pilot they sent out, me and this other guy. He's passed, bless his heart, Wayne Carter. So here's the deal. We got a call from the commanding officer that says they just had a flying NASA and Air Force were involved in. They had a UFO crash, and we had to go and get the bodies. Well, how are you going to get the bodies in a helicopter? How many bodies they have? This thing was 3.5 football fields long.
Really?
It was 4 stories high. It killed 300 Air Force men. They're all buried at Kelly Air Force Base with their no names on them. They said they never happened. They didn't exist in the military. And their wives are still confined to the same rooms, motel, whatever they are. They're not allowed to leave San Antonio.
Really?
Now, all this I know.
Where did this crash happen?
Okay. Between Houston and Galveston, there's a town called Friendswood.
Okay.
Now it's all, back then it was a forest, and the trees were 60, 80 foot tall, massive forest. That's where it crashed. It covered 6 miles. 6 miles, this one crash. So you'd say, well, how come no one knows about it? I have no idea. In my helicopter, I had 5 radios, and I talked to 5 different agencies. They all knew it was there, and they called me out there, and we had to land and talk to all the guys in the green fatigues. These were Air Force officers in green fatigues with no insignias. They had 300 flatbed trucks. Wow. Now, where'd they get all this stuff from? Because I was a Coast Guard pilot. I knew all about that area. All those trucks came from NASA. So here they told me to go get the bodies because there were several main fires, but the main crash was about 3 miles from us, and I wasn't allowed to go near that. It was one humongous dome of light. It's like magnesium, and it was considerably taller than the Astrodome. It was a massive ball of light. You couldn't miss it. Every plane from Houston had to fly right over. They all saw it, but they probably didn't know that was a UFO crash. I don't know what. We had over 400 phone calls on this crash.
Really?
And the first phone call we got on, it came from Puerto Rico. I'll never forget that. They told us, hey, you just had a major crash. Oh, boy. Then my commanding officer called, and away we went. So I looked for bodies, but they all died in the main crash, and we weren't allowed to go anywhere near that. They put a cone of 6 miles up to 10,000 feet for about 6 months to clean all that out, and no one could fly through that. And but like I say, those 5 agencies, they all were there. And how is it that nobody? Well, it gets a lot worse because I got in trouble. So did, bless her heart, that what they did to her 10 years later, wow. So this didn't stop. Went for a long time. So the next day, are y'all interested in this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay. Now remember, whoever's listening to this, I'm a bona fide character. You've got to be for stuff that happened to me. So there I am. I'm in the Coast Guard station the next day. They didn't have an actual station. They have a NASA hangar. We were renting it, I guess. And inside that hangar, they built a station in top security. Because I had a top secret clearance, I didn't even know it. All Coast Guard pilots do. So we're in there. We're in the operation officer room. About maybe, I'm going to guess, 26 pilots. And then I don't know how many enlisted guys. The radio guy was there. I remember him, and his name was Jester. I remember him. So Jester, if you ever hear this, call me. So here we are. We're in there, and I had my back to the wall doing my work because I was working. And all of a sudden it got very quiet. And I was sitting there thinking, what's going on? And then I looked over to Jester. He rolled himself out of the radio room, and he's looking in the center of the room, and with his eyes and his mouth open. So I turned around. 3 men appeared like Spock in the middle of that room. Didn't go through any doors. And There they were. These guys were 7 foot tall.
What?
7. They were skinny as a rail. And they no more looked human than the man on the moon. And they had colonel uniforms on. Of course, they didn't fit them, but they had them on. There are no colonels at Arlington Air Force Base. And what were they doing there? Our boss was an admiral. He never found out who those guys were. And they left before he could even meet them. They didn't even go to our admiral. They came straight into that room where we were. And the Air Force denies ever having those guys there. They have no idea who we were talking about, but we all saw them. Anyway, they only asked one thing. By the way, they were stuck together.
They were stuck together.
Yeah, they were like this.
The three guys.
Yep, just like that. I mean, they weren't stuck, but they were together.
Right.
And one of them, the only one on the end, spoke. He says, "Where's Lieutenant Thornsberg?" That's me. And no one said a word. And the radio guy's sitting there. He was a funny character. He was sitting there and he looking at me, and I finally said, "Okay, I'm Lieutenant Thornsberg." Why didn't he ask for the main pilot, who was Wayne Carter? Oh, no, they wanted Lieutenant Thornsberg. They took me out of that building, put me in a Blazer. I don't know what, that's all I can say. But it's a very peculiar car because the windows were solid black. They were made that way. They wouldn't paint it on or nothing. It was just built like that. So I get in there. They put me in. I wasn't allowed to do anything. They opened the door, made me sit. They shut the door. Then they were driving off to take me to somewhere. All right. So it only took them about 3 or 4 minutes. That seemed like a long time in the car because you didn't know who these guys were and you couldn't see anything in that car.
Right.
It was totally dark. So how could I even drive the darn thing? All right. 3 minutes. Let's say 3 minutes. They stopped. This guy that was sitting with me in the back got out, came around, he opened the door, and out I got with him. Now they're all three stuck together again, and I'm standing right there, and guess what? There ain't no Houston, there ain't no Ellington Air Force Base, there's nothing. All that area is connected. There's no space between buildings and stuff. Gone, no Houston. In 3 minutes it disappeared, and so did everything. And I was wondering, well, where the heck am I? I'm out in the middle of nowhere. There's still a little road here and an old barn or something over here. Other than that, I didn't see anything. There's no, you can see the bay and everything out there, but it's gone. But there was a massive, huge white building. This thing, it looked 2-story, but I don't think there was a second story on it. But it was massive. It looked like a dormitory. One full side was blank. The other end was blank, just door, one little door. And then all the sides had windows and many, many rooms. And then there's a hall all the way through it. So they get over to the door, and I'm thinking to myself, how are they going to get in the door? I'm sorry, it's funny. I was wondering, who are these guys? Because they were weird. They didn't even look like they walked. Everything about them was weird. So they didn't talk to me. No one's saying a word. They just pointed. So they pointed to the door. I opened the door and went inside, and I went to turn around. I was looking at all the doors and everything. And by the time I got around, they were already inside. They were standing right next to me. So I don't know. I wasn't paying any attention to them. But then they started marching down with me, and they stopped. They turned around and faced me, and they pointed to one of the doors. And all he said to me, and this is the last thing he said. First, where's Lieutenant Thornsberg? Now this time, he points to the door, and he says, "Now that you're one of us." That's what he said.
And what did he mean by that?
You tell me.
You haven't figured it out?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you have figured it out.
This never ended. This went on for a long time. So.
And how come they chose you out of the other pilots?
That's very good. When I was doing the tours here back 4 or 5 years ago, I was taking I had a van, but this van had mom and daddy, 4 children, and grandpa and grandma. Of course, grandpa was in the very back. He was real, he didn't talk, grumpy. So we're driving down, and I was telling him about this same story. And he had, somebody asked me the same question you just said. And he said, "I know why they only wanted you." And, of course, I pulled off the road because they looked at Grandpa and said, "Grandpa, you paying attention to the story?" Because they thought he was sound asleep. And he said, "Yes." He said, and then the daughter says, "You know why?" And he said, "Yes, I do." He's just, So we pulled off, and I said, "Why?" He says, they picked you because they knew you were from Marfa. Because you hadn't heard what this has to do with Marfa yet. So they knew I was from Marfa. I'm convinced of it.
Really?
Now that wasn't the last time I met those guys. So anyway.
You've seen them other times.
Well, I have a picture of them in here.
Of the 3 guys?
And I didn't meet them this time, but that's part of the story.
Okay. I'm on the edge of the seat.
Okay,
and I need to.
It is really phenomenal what comes in a minute.
Okay.
All right. Now calm down, everybody. There we
I
go.
know it's kind of hard. My heart's going like
Yeah, well, I was calm during all this because I never knew what UFOs were. I didn't know anything about it. I only knew Marfa Lights. I had no idea that were called UFOs. So anyway, so even he's getting upset. I'm sorry. All right, here we go. So they pointed to that door. I opened the door to go in, and then they shut it and locked it. So now I'm in this room. And this room was about maybe, I'm going to guess, probably a 30 by 20 room. I'm telling you, this building was huge. It ain't small.
Okay.
So, and by the way, when this was all over with, my roommate was a pilot. We went out and drove all day looking for that building. You couldn't miss it. It was twice the size of a hangar, and yet we couldn't find it anywhere. It was gone. So it just doesn't exist. So this was a library of sort. And memory said, now that you're one of us. So they let me in this room. Now this room had a table that went down the center of it. It was one piece of wood. I was fascinated with that. And it was probably about, I'm going to guess, as long as the room for sure. It had about 80 chairs around it. And so it was a conference room, library, or whatever. And it had one massive book in the center of it. It was about maybe 2 foot by 2 foot by maybe 2 foot. I mean, it was massive. And it was the Bible of everything that ever happened on this planet with UFOs. Yet it was peanuts compared to what the Jews have written.
Really?
Jews have it all. These guys will always wonder if they would just go get these books, they would have no problem. They would have it all down. So anyway, so here's the deal. But I didn't know that till later, till I met this character. Okay, my lovely wife. All right, now, so...
I'm sorry, is that making too much noise?
Okay, here I go.
I'm sorry.
So, but the room itself, all the way around the room was a library up to about 5 feet, bookshelves. But it was all these military documents and drawings and sketches. It's all kinds of stuff. No way I had any, nowhere. I don't know. I had no time. But I figured they wanted me to read that big book. That's why I would be sitting there on the table. But above that, you guys that are into UFO stuff, I wonder about you. I honest to God do, especially MUFON. What we found out about MUFON. Stay the you-know-it away from them. There above that shelves, beautiful photographs all the way around of what NASA was doing to human beings.
Really?
Tim, you're going to make a lot of enemies.
No. Can you cut that out? Or just say, I saw horrible things that were being done to people.
Really?
And
are you talking people extraterrestrial wise, or are you talking about people on
both.
Earth wise? Really?
And I've seen a lot of these photographs. For a few years after that, I started reading books, the famous, and I saw a lot of that stuff in those books. So whoever was involved, they released some of those photographs. But it was bad. And I didn't want to be in there anymore, but it was just, I didn't know what it was. But I went and I sat and opened that book. The book said,
cut that part, Steve.
The book said UFOs and a threat to national security. And on the side it had Library of Congress, DOD, and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So I opened it up and it started detailing all the different kinds of things, just stuff that you can find in any UFO book. But it's interesting. They only had this, cigar, and Foo Fighters, the balls of many colors. And of the three, I read a little bit more. They knew nothing about these, but they were petrified of them. Petrified. They still are today.
NASA and the military?
Everybody.
Okay.
Because of what they can do. Now, it's not that they harm people like the cigar and the disc. They harm people, but not these guys.
And when you say harm people, what are you referring to?
Well, they
do experiments on them, or
everything you read on UFOs about people get, things happen to them. They get stamped on their bodies. They had operations on them, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, the third category, and none of that happens.
Okay.
And But in the book here, there's two. There's probably more than two. But I found out that Library of Congress is the one who writes all this stuff up. It's not the Air Force. They do stuff, but it's the Library of Congress who does all the investigating. And they had two places I found in there that discussed some of this stuff. And well, you can read the book.
The book's on my. I'm going to buy a book.
Well, their results, you are going to be surprised what they came up with. So anyway, but the third category, the balls, Foo Fighters, the balls of many colors, which by the way only fly with bombers. They won't fly with civilian or fighters. They only fly with bombers. And in World War II, they started seeing them at the end of the war. They only flew with bombers even then. So, but they do fly with all the Gemini flights, all the Challenger flights. They're always there. And they call
all around the aircraft that's flying.
Yes, and they're called bogies. The military calls them bogies. They don't say Foo Fighters.
Okay.
So
now the pilots are aware that they're being followed, or
oh yeah, many movies of them.
Okay.
I've seen lots of movies on them. So, and that's what they have here. They flew with these bombers.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm going to collect my thoughts.
Why do they fly with bombers? I'm just curious why they fly specifically with bombers.
I don't have an answer to that one.
Okay.
I really don't have an answer to that one. See, I flew helicopters. I trained in World War II planes, but in the Coast Guard, I flew helicopters. In the Navy, I flew the big H-46 twin rotor guys.
Okay.
And then, by the way, I was the public relations officer for Senator Stennis, who was the head of the armed forces. Boy,
okay.
Was that a challenge? They don't like public relations officers. They didn't like Stennis. They shot the poor guy. And then they tried to get me kicked out of the Navy. It was horrible the way people act. So I'm glad I'm out of the military. But anyway, in the Coast Guard, so I read the book, and I immediately flipped. I didn't want to read all that stuff. So I flipped to the part where the threat to national security. Marfa was number one.
Really?
Big, fat, blue Marfa, plain as day. And I read every word that they wrote in that. And this is Wright-Patterson, the Library of Congress, and Department of Defense. Marfa, when you stand out there at that viewing site, and you're looking at where that air base used to be, according to that book, that's the number one threat to America.
Really?
Right there.
And the threat is from extraterrestrials?
Yes. Let's just leave it like that. From the Marfa Lights.
From the Marfa Lights.
Now, why are they a threat? I just told you they don't harm people. Well, unfortunately, they shut down their power grid twice in 65 and 70. One light did it.
Really?
They didn't tell the truth about it in 65. They said the generators that they had up there's three of them. There's one in New York, one in Texas, one in California. They said the generator malfunctioned, and then all the way from New York clear down the tip of Florida. It was a disaster. We saw a documentary on all the cameras and all the photographs, whatever these people took, and flashlights during the darkness, and what happened to them, how they were murdered, and how all these things were. We couldn't even watch about half of it. It was horrible. So it still exists, that documentary somewhere, but it petrified our government that they could shut down their power with one light. And that was a lie what they said. They said the generator went bad. No, it didn't. One of those lights hovered over that plant and stopped everything, and it stayed there for 2 weeks. They did it twice. They did it at the exact same time they did it to Russia. Russia is petrified of them too. All this, I read a bit of it. So they're petrified of them. That's why they.
So now, is this why they're at this point in time pushing the EMF, sunspot, electromagnetic field rays, and that type of stuff, and they're scared that it's going to shut the power grid and stuff down again?
If they can shut the power grid down, they'll tell them what else they can do. You ought to see what they did out here when I was doing my tours.
What'd they do?
Well, one night, Mr. Shirley called me because he had, this guy has 5 Airbnbs out there, huge. You can put 3 families in each one of these houses. And people from all over the world come. But they come because it's beautiful out there. And it's in the mountains. They got volcanoes. And but mostly they come, the engineers, like NASA, and doctors and lawyers and scientists. And they buy the whole place up It's just so only them and Mr. Shirley can be out on that mountain to see the lights, and they can film and do whatever. So, but this night he had 2 engineers, and I don't know how many doctors, not many, but I was with them all. I went out there, stayed with them. We didn't see anything. So I told Michael around 1 o'clock in the morning, I said, Mike, I'm going home. I still got 23 miles drive home. So I get in my truck, and I'm on, it's a 3-mile route through the mountains to get back to the highway. But I noticed a light was behind me all of a sudden, and it would follow me all through the mountains. So I decided, since there's only one light, I figured it might be one of these lights. So I got out, and I have a pickup truck. I got out, and I started walking towards that light. It immediately took off, and it was way beyond the stars. I mean, it was way out there. And it beamed one beam straight down and went right through my truck. It couldn't have been more than about 2-inch beam. And it went right through the top of my truck, went through the bottom of the truck, went right on the ground. And there was no shadows. I didn't have a shadow. There were no shadows. That light went through everything. It went through me. It went through the truck, went through the trees, everything. But the fascinating thing about it, I could see 23 miles back to Marfa, crystal clear, every building. That is some kind of light. And the only people who ever talk about lights like that I've ever read are the Jews, way back in Moses' day. They wrote all about it. So I got in the truck and drove off. It didn't hurt my truck, went right through it. By the way, this happens more than once out there to the Border Patrol people, and I've got down on record too.
Really?
So I go out and I call Michael. I say, Michael, you're not going to believe this. And what did he say to me? He said, don't tell me your truck got hit with a beam. I said, how'd you know that? He said, it's happened 6 times to us already. Wow. And the engineer said, he worked for Lockheed or somebody like that. He said he didn't think anybody in America had the power to do that from that far out in space and pinpoint perfectly where it wanted to hit. And it wasn't a red beam, it was a white beam. And so anyway.
It didn't affect any of your electronics or anything on
Nothing.
your truck?
Well, the truck, you know what? No one ever asked me that before. The truck never stopped running.
It just stayed running?
Yep.
So it didn't affect any of the electronics or anything?
And it went right through the truck. Right through it. The beam never diffused. It went like a laser clean through into the ground.
Can we take my truck tonight?
That's cute.
Well, first of all, I don't like going out there. I don't mind taking you out, but I'm telling you, other things happen after that, and it's just not good. So I was back there. I read that. I saw that, and but I immediately thought, I knew the mayor of Marfa I knew who he was. Now, Mike Shirley knew him real well because he took pilot license from him. This guy who had his name was Fritz Call. If you look on the internet, he's the only one you'll ever find that ever knew anything about the Marfa Lights. And everything, all books, everything. Because he was the only operation officer of that base, 3 years, the only one. And he's the only one that everybody came to, that he would fly them all around and everything and show them everything that he knew. So these lights aren't just at night, they're during the day as well. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Mr. Shirley's got great photographs of them. Okay, I got to be careful what I'm saying, because something happened to her, and NASA did something to her.
Again, Steve, cut this part.
Yeah, that's why I don't like NASA. So anyway, here's the deal. The only operation officer. Okay, I'm going to take a break for a second and tell you what happened 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I have a very good friend. He lives in Alpine. He's not there now, or you could go see it yourself. He fell in love with a young lady. He's 59 years old, and the lady was, whatever. And he was taking her all over South Texas, showing them the mountains and everything. And they came and visited me, and they both had a phone, and they showed me on their phone what was going on. The whole time they're driving, you had these little blue balls floating, 10 of them, floating in all directions, float about maybe 5 or 6 feet from the car.
Really?
As they were driving down, and every time they stopped.
I wonder if it's because they saw your ambulance.
Okay, every time they stopped, they would get out, the lights just hovered. They didn't go flying off. They stood right there. And I was thinking to myself, and by the way, this guy I'm telling you about, he's got to be the smartest person we've ever met and never meet a smarter one. Unbelievable. He was, one of the things he did, he was a commander of a nuclear sub. So, you know, not exactly.
I don't know.
Don't go and check.
No. Okay.
Okay. So his girlfriend was just totally enthralled. What happened?
I'm working on it here. Yes, we're still good.
Okay, so he was a nuclear submarine commander amongst things. He was a Green Beret. He was captured. The helicopter was shot down. I don't know if I shouldn't tell you anymore because it's personal. I shouldn't even have said that. But he's the only one that survived.
Okay, Steve, cut this.
No, you can do all that. That's okay.
That's okay to say.
Yeah. I didn't mention his name, and I just tell you. So, and I didn't go on. I'll just stop there. But in the medical field, prosthesis.
Right.
Here a few years ago, all of America started a whole new program, and it had to do with computers and stuff. He was the only one they called, and he did it all. And he was allowed not to be involved in surgeries and tell them what to do. Nobody does that. Well, he did. This guy is something else. So anyway, he was the one driving the car. And I was saying, well, you know, why didn't you go walk over there to him? I don't know why he didn't do it. But anyway, they showed me their phones. And there are the lights. I saw them. All right, so, but what was interesting about the whole thing, as they were traveling, and it was all day long, the sun never moved. And it looked like a star. And it was very bright. And I looked at it and I asked them, what time of day was this, you guys? Oh, we started this thing 11 o'clock. I said, look where the sun is. And that nuclear guy goes, uh-oh. The sun can't be at 3 o'clock if you're at 11 o'clock.
Right.
He said, and I don't think that's the sun. I just don't believe it is. It's too darn close. And I said, you know what? And they gave me the phone. Well, I grabbed the phone. I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put my finger on your sun, and I'm going to open it up. And I'd be willing to bet there's a big fat blue ball behind that sun. And in the sun, we opened it up. There it was, huge flying craft. And all these little blue balls came from it. And the blue balls had a red rim around it. I don't know what that meant. But anyway, there was that craft.
Really?
And I've got a picture of it on her phone, but I don't have the video. I want the video. But it's great. But see, I get stuff like this all the time. So here I go. These lights, by the way, on Highway 90, they're constantly getting in people's cars. They go right in and sit in the back seat. I have many friends who will tell you that happened to them or other things. So here we go.
Like it's just an orb.
Yeah.
And it sits in the back seat.
Well, it's not an orb. It's an actual ball of light.
And it sits in the back seat.
Yep. It hovers. And it goes right through buses and scares the top. You ought to get the AAA magazine that we have on, and is 2018. They talk all about it. That's great. It's unbelievable. So I read the book. They came and let me out. They took me back to the air station. They never talked to me. And when I got in the air station, that Mr. Jester, the radio guy, he rolls out right in front of all the officers. He screamed at everybody. He says, you know those guys weren't from this planet. And the Coast Guard officers, they're immune to stuff. I don't know what all they do. They just didn't talk about it. A lot of them were Vietnam guys, been shot down so many times, everything. They just oblivious. But they're the best pilots in the entire world. Nobody has better pilots than the Coast Guard. And the stuff we did in the Coast Guard, just Houston, Texas, they're the only ones in the world that are allowed to turn the engine off on you whenever they want. And in a helicopter, that's deadly.
Oh, yeah.
And they put you in a hood. There were 6 Navy pilots. They put you in a hood. And they would do that all the time. We do instrument stuff, and they do emergencies on you so you can't see what they're going to do. But this, not the Coast Guard. They bubble up the whole helicopter. They cover all your instruments where you only have the wet ball and you have a rat out and then airspeed. The rest of them are gone. You don't even know how your engine's doing. And then they do it at night, and then they turn the engine off.
And then what do?
You don't know if you're over land or water. So they have to tell you that because it's 2 different landings. And then you fly it down in the dark where you can't see anything and you land it. That's what you do.
Wow.
And it only takes about 3 seconds. If you haven't done anything in 3 seconds, it's over with. And the knuckleheads that do that, the guy that was doing it to me all the time, he was the #1 Coast Guard pilot, test pilot. So he was constantly, he's doing me on takeoff too, which can't be done. They show you in the book up to a certain airspeed, a certain liftoff, you have an engine failure, it's going to crash. But he'd do it to me all the time. So all those books were worthless because I landed them. But I was the only pilot that they allowed to do all this stuff because he was the check pilot. And I was the only one that could land on a Coast Guard cutter. That's not easy. Now, if that isn't the scariest moment, you go out there at night, and you can only go 6 miles in a helicopter, you can have fixed wing. Oh no, he takes you way out there. You don't know where you're going, you see a little dinky light and you go right to it, and it's a big old cutter in total dark. Why don't they pick a night with the moon's out? Oh no, they pick it totally dark. The only thing they have there is a man standing on there with 2 flashlights with red cones on it, and you got to get right up on him to see him. But what you have, these are the old cutters where they have 2x4s on the back of the ship, and it's not very wide. So you have to land in the middle. They painted it red, so to get the 2 tires in that. But you can't go beyond it by 2 of the thing, or you run into the superstructure. So that guy's standing there by himself, and he thinks when you can land, because the ship is going right and left, up and down, and you can see it, and then it's gone, and then it's there. And they want you to land it. And I asked the guy, I said, how in the heaven's name anybody going to land it when you can't even see the stupid ship? You barely can see the red as it goes by. And he says, you have to. Wow. And there's a poor kid in the back's got the door wide open so he can jump in the ocean if we don't. So he lands it right in there. He never even looked at the kid. He just lands it right in there. And they have to run out real quick and hook the helicopter or flip over the side of the ship. So then he said, are you ready? I said, okay. So he unhooked it and you take off. Listen, getting off a carrier in a helicopter ain't easy. Right. It looks easy. It isn't easy. Not in a helicopter. You drop the moment you get to the side. But this thing, holy smokes, I don't know how you get off of it. But it's just a miracle to me because there's no surface there to keep you up. So I tried it once and missed it. And the helicopter was about 45, and it wasn't quite 45. And one soul on that boat ran up knowing he could get hit by the rotors, and he snapped on that helicopter, and then everybody came out and yanked me back on that really? And that pilot looked at me and he said, the poor kid in the back, he said, don't ever do that again. And he was dead serious. But then he made me take off again and try it again. And but I did. And I got in there. Once you got in once, you figured it out. But I say you figured it out. You had to be careful all the time, the Coast Guard. But then I went off to Cuba on one of their boats, and that's where they let me go. All right, so I did all that. Okay. I go back to the Navy. And many years later, I come back to Houston. Now, I'm out of the military now. My dad was a pharmacist, and I started pharmacy school. That's why I went back there. So anyway, I went there, and MUFON found out that I had been involved in a UFO crash. And the way they found out is, I'll tell you this, now that whoever's listening will know this really happened. There was an incident after, this was summer 1975, what happened to me, that crash. But 78, there was a spectacular incident in Dayton, north of Houston, called Dayton. And it was a diamond that came down in front of Vicki Landrum and Betty Cash. That was the story. and the Fonz, Henry Winkler.
Right.
He took it and made a big special about those two people. Well, I knew that lady. I went and she gave me, I wrote down everything she said because no one was listening to her. And but anyway, that is a story in itself. So
What was the name of the movie that?
there was no movie. It was they did a 2-hour special on television. Henry Winkler did a 2-hour special on Vicky. It's called the Vicki Leonard and Betty Cash Incident.
Okay.
And but I know
never
far
heard
more
of
than he's ever said. They were driving down a highway in a dark not road, and this thing landed in front of them on fire. And there were 26 helicopters, Marine, what do they call those things? Chinooks, following it. And then it took off and went off. This is at night. And well, they actually got out of the car to look at it. One of them did, and then she died. It killed her, not real quick, but she died. And the other stayed in the car. And but she got back in the car and it had a plastic steering wheel. When she put her hands on it, it melded right into it. And that's how hot the car got. And all the trees to the right of it was burnt. When I was there many years later, they were burnt, completely gone.
Really?
It just wiped them out when that thing took off. And she found one of those helicopters and talked to one of the pilots. And they told her, ma'am, you better not ask any questions. You just best you forget this ever happened. But she didn't. She snuck out there on that road and waited to see what would happen. That road went for 1/8 of a mile, the stretch.
Right.
I don't know how long it took her to do this, but she watched them tear it up, repave it 7 times, and it melted every single time.
Really?
The 7th time, they dug a 6-foot hole and concreted the whole doggone thing.
Wow. And that was north of Houston.
Yes, a place called Dayton. So she told me they concreted it. Now, I never went back there because I figured it had that much radiation. I've seen it. I took photographs of it, but I don't know if I want to be around. If there's that much radiation there, why would anybody want to go there? So, but that was very interesting. That was 3 years after this crash. And we know about the Vicki Landrum, but this thing was this huge cigar thing. You would think everybody would know about it. Well, they do. There were 5 people on my radios. The Houston police knew it. NASA knew it. Air Force obviously knew it. Coast Guard knew it, and I can't remember who the 5th one was. So, but I had to talk to all 5 of them at different times. So anyway, I came back. MUFON got a hold of me. And I remember their names, but I won't mention their name. But they got a hold of me. They're in Houston. That's their hubbub. And they asked us to go. He wanted me to give them all the information I had. He invited us to one of their meetings. I said, okay, so we'll go. Should I tell them?
Might as well.
All right. We go to their meeting, and I just had married her.
Okay.
Well, if they want to hear it.
Do what?
Absolutely.
Yes, we want to hear it.
Oh, all right. So we go, and that he just invited us and told us where it was. And I really don't remember. I know it was really big old building, and it's kind of like a church. It had an aisle down the center, and then there was a podium. And okay, so and Bud Hopkins was the guest speaker. Number UFO. And I can't tell you the other name. I know his name. He became the #1 UFO guy after that, a writer. But so here's what happened.
You might as well go ahead and tell them.
No. Okay. He's probably dead now anyway.
Okay.
Should I say the name?
I don't know.
Leave it out.
Okay.
Don't say
All
it.
right. I'll write it down for you. So, so we're there. Now we're sitting. We came in and we sat right here where we're supposed to. And next to me were all these NASA propulsion engineers. They were young. And the head guy is the one I'm not going to mention his name. But there they were. And they were all decked out like they're going to church. And all the women they had everything on. And
They were just dressed up nice, that's all. They just looked nice.
well, they looked nice to me. So we're sitting there. And then Bud Hopkins gets up and starts talking. Oh, on the other side of the aisle, there's every and anybody involved in the occult. You name it. And Houston's got thousands of them. There they were, the most peculiar people, all into channeling and talking to ETs and everything. They were there. And he starts talking about how they communicate with these creatures. And I looked at the guy next to me and said, wait a minute, who are you? And he said, oh, we're the NASA propulsion engineers from NASA. Really, really. And I said, what? It says, you're into this stuff? And his wife stands up in front of everybody. I don't know, there must have been 2,000 or 3,000 people there.
1,000.
Do what?
There were thousands.
She didn't. I remember it very well. And she says, go ahead and ask. Yes, we're into the occult. We don't believe in a Jesus like that. She said the word Jesus. We don't believe in that. He's just a spirit out there. And says, aren't you involved in this? She grabs it and says, let's get the heck out of here. My wife pulls me out of there and we were gone. And what a peculiar group of people. So what I do the next day, I made a mistake. And I decided to call their head engineer because I knew him. I didn't know him personally, but I knew who he was. And the guy who asked to invite us there knew him extremely well. So I called him. And sure enough, he answered the phone. And I said, excuse me, what is the deal here? Are you guys involved in the cult? Oh, was he mad. He wanted to know who the heck I was and slammed the phone on me. Here's the go. The phone slammed. It was in my kitchen. I put my phone down. I looked at my wife and said, that guy just hung up on me. I offended him. Before I could say I offended him, the phone rang. And I picked it up. It was the MUFON guy, the head of MUFON. It wasn't even a minute. And he's talking to me and saying, never call him again. He's yelling at me. Don't ever call him again. Were they tapping my phone? How'd they know I called him? He couldn't have possibly called that guy in that short a time. But I don't know. I guess he did. But they kept bugging me for I don't know how many years. We finally moved out on it, and I called the guy. I said, will you leave us alone? Just leave us alone. And so we hadn't heard from him since. That was back in 1995. So,
wow. So they were offended that you were wanting to know if they were involved in the occult.
I don't know if it was that. I think they were offended because they were involved in UFO stuff. And NASA... I know who those guys are. I found out who they were. And I can't say it on here.
Okay.
And that's whatever.
Okay.
Do you remember von Braun, the big NASA engineer guy that our space program?
No. I'm not familiar with him.
He's not who they say he was. So anyway, well, they know who von Braun is, whoever's listening. So anyway, here we go. So then I moved to Marfa many years later, which was, 2014. And then that Mr. Shirley, he moved back too. We were high school friends, and we moved back. And he found out, he says, bringing people out to see my UFOs out here. Well, that ranch out there is very interesting. He grew up, do you remember Chuck Yeager?
Yeah.
That was his hideout.
Okay.
And he loved his daddy, Michael's father. He was a military pilot, but they just bonded and they did everything. Mike's father was a wonderful, good-looking guy. He was just real popular in Hollywood. He did movies, and he had that's where he had all the Hollywood parties out here. And that was some kind of place where he grew up. And that's where NASA would go. The pilots would go and retire out there. They all came to see the lights. So it was a big thing. When they had the movie The Giant here in Marfa with Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, James Dean, guess where they went to learn how to ride horses and everything and had all their big parties? That was at this ranch. That's how popular this ranch was.
Okay.
So the lights were extremely popular. All right. So I went out there and AAA Magazine, 2018, there's an article about us. And shortly after that, I was telling Michael, I said, Michael, in here I have stories about how the people were petrified. They didn't put their names in here. They gave me permission. And but I had come, I skipped a spot, and I'll come back to Marfa. When I left that room and they took me back to the Coast Guard station, those three characters, those 7-foot guys, I immediately called the mayor of Marfa and said, can I come talk to you? Because Marfa was in that book, and he was the operation officer out there, and I figured he wasn't telling everybody what's going on. So he said, sure, he had no idea who it was. He knew my mom and dad very well. My mom was the hospice nurse of Marfa. How could you not know her? Dad was the only pharmacist, so whatever. So I came out. Now, what are my chances of this happening? When he left in 46, when they shut the base down, Wright Patterson got a hold of him. Says, you're not leaving. You can never leave Marfa. Get used to it. It says, you have a super mega clearance now. All you're going to do is monitor those lights until we tell you to stop.
Really?
So, but I didn't know any of this. Nobody in this town knows it to this day. So I went, and Wright Patterson, all those years till the summer of '75, they never came to got his documents. But they showed up the week before I showed up, and they wanted him to fly them all around out there day and night to do their whatever. See, they know more about the lights than anybody, and they know what to do out there, and they were out there. And then they told him they were going to be another week, and they said, you can't go anymore. Now we're firing you. This is so sensitive, you can't be involved in it anymore. So whatever they filmed that second week, it's the number one threat to American security at the top in the Blue Room. That's where it is right now. Wow. And so, needless to say, he was very mad. They wouldn't let him leave Marfa. He'd been there since '46 doing all this. There's another man named Stan Redding. He went with him out there. Stan Redding, it's all in my book. Who the heck was Stan Redding? Stan Redding, in Houston you have the Houston Chronicle and the Houston Post. Houston Post when it was going on back then when I was a little boy. Every Sunday they'd write an article about the Marfa Lights, every single Sunday. Really? And in both buildings, they had the 13th floor of both buildings was called the Redding Room, and nobody could get in there. The only people who could get in there is him and the Secret Service. I won't mention any names. So, now how do I know all this? Well, I know. He told me. But not only that, there's a lady that lives in this town right now who's a good friends of the owner of the Chronicle. And she's old now, but she called her and said, hey, what's the deal with the Redding Room? She said, I'll tell you, this is the most bizarre thing in the world. There was no elevator that went there. Only you can get there by stairs. And she said, we don't know what happened to it. They came and took everything when he died. Really? So whatever he had in there, but he was the one that was out here with his photographer. Even though I'll find some date, but I still wrote everything that he wrote in here. I got it in here, so I got it. So here's the deal. So he was mad. They fired him. And I show up the day they fired him. They fired him in the morning. And I drove up. There were 7 outlying fields for that big air base out there. And one of them is our airport now here north of town. Okay. And then he was out there in an old World War II hangar. So, but he was out in the yard doing something, and I walked up, and I had my flight jacket on. I was a young guy. I had my flight that had my Coast Guard hat on. I was real proud of being a pilot in the Coast Guard. And since he was a great pilot in World War II, we had a lot of pilots in this town in World War II. If you only knew what happened in this town, it's unbelievable what they did here. So, Marfa has so many firsts in America, it's unbelievable. Really? You get back on that road, and you go all the way down to the golf course, which is 2 miles from here. That was one of the outlying fields. And they still have 2 hangars sitting there. That was where military aviation in America began, period, right here in this town. Everything started here. Had nothing to do with that air base out there. All aviation began right here in Marfa, Texas. And the hangars are still there. All right,
was like World War I?
1911.
1911.
That's when it started.
Prior to World War I. Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't even told you about Marfa history. I've got a map out here that in 1911, when the military left Marfa, they went down there and gave a blueprint of all of Marfa, because it was all military installation. You just gave it to the city and said, here, this is yours. 1911, they stuck it in their attic. It stayed there till 4 summers ago when I went and found it and I brought it home.
Really?
I'm the only one in Marfa has it, and only one person knows I have it. And I have it. And it's posted right here. You can see it yourself. It's outside.
Okay.
And I made copies of it because it's so old it's going to be ruined in a few years. But it has things on there that nobody in this town ever knew that happened. Stuff that's phenomenal. They don't even know. So, but I know. I have it. So here's the deal. I did what Mike wanted me to do. I started taking people out to his ranch to see all these lights. Now, I will tell you, we can see as far as 38 miles to Mexico and Big Bend. Okay. It's a dip, and it comes up. There's 38 miles. That's where the lights come out. They come out on those mountains. And they look small. Some don't look small, but 38 miles. You see something the size of a nickel. That's pretty big light. Right. And the domes they put up look like a city. That's how much light they have. So anyway, so that's really the people they just don't know what to say. I remember one night, it was I think they were from New Braunfels. No, they're from Dallas. And he was a superintendent, and the other guy was a football coach. And they had their children. And we didn't see anything. So a little boy said, hey, there's a ladder that's far off to the right. We're looking straight. But the one coming to the right, that comes every now and then. But that one, you watch out. And Michael and I turned and looked at it, said, uh-oh. And so you guys, you might want to get ready, get in your cars and everything. And what happens is that light comes towards us, and then it splits into 2, then it splits into 4. And then it starts rotating, but it gets almost right to us. So, I mean, we never, it's just nerving. And then it goes back to 1 and gone. It always does that, but all of them do that. So, but that one was very close. But these things come in orange. When they're orange, they're huge. They're like 4 or 5 stories tall, and they're massive. And that's what you'll read in this book about 6 CEOs from Missouri, never been to Texas before. And they were all decked out. The women, 3 guys. And we went out there. Those lights met us, screamed all the way back. Border Patrol pulled their guns on us, everything. They wouldn't quit screaming. These guys had to have been in their late 59, 60, 61, screaming. The man tried to choke me. He jumped up in the front of the car when the UFO showed up. He jumped in the front, and I have a Christ, what do you call that, a Town and Country. He put his arm, now he was in the very back. He had to jump over the ladies. He grabbed me around the neck and put his hand on the armrest, and he was choking the tar out of me. I mean, I couldn't breathe or anything, and I couldn't do anything. And then the other guy jumped from the back. He got the little console there. He's on the console, and he put his foot on the gas pedal. The gas pedal, that would have gone right through the gate and into the UFO. But he put his foot on the doggone gas pedal, and I had my foot on the brake. Because I was being, choked. I just put my foot on the brake, and we just spun the front tires. Finally, I elbowed him, got off me. I don't know how. Maybe the women got him off me on the back. I don't know how he got off me. But we turned around, and we went 18 miles screaming all the way. 18 miles. And when I got to checkpoint for the Border Patrol, I said, you can't be screaming. I stopped about maybe 100 yards. So you can't be screaming. They'll tear my car apart. You got to be screaming. Of course, there's traffic behind me. They're all ready to go through there. So we go up slowly, and first of all, they were so dumb, they didn't know what Border Patrol was. And when they saw they had guns, they started screaming, they got guns. I said, these are federal agents, for heaven's sakes. What are you talking about? Well, they said, do the Mexicans have guns? I said, oh yeah, they got a lot of guns. And then they started screaming again, the Mexicans have guns. I said, unbelievable, y'all can't act like this. So I said,
what are they so scared of? I mean,
they were petrified of these two UFOs that showed up at the gate. They were massive. They were considerably larger than our courthouse. They were about 5 or 6 stories high, and massive orange ones. And by the way, the orange ones always are together. There's 2 of them, always, every time I saw them. And but these were right there with us. Those lights, they look small, but when they get up to you, they're humongous. So they're all spheres here. I don't see cigars. I didn't see discs. I only saw 1 disc, and that ended it. I never went back. What they did to the people I was with, I never went back. And so, and Mr. Shirley, he just poo-poos it. So that's just one story. And but I won't tell you the whole story. I'll let you read it.
I'm going to.
So. And I doubt they'll ever come back, but in Missouri, they know all about me. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind. So I was petrified, 2 of these lights. What makes them think that they're the only ones that have the right to be scared? So.
Have you ever been injured by the lights?
No.
Have you ever been abducted?
No.
Then what is I'm trying to figure out the fear point. I mean, if you know that
Here it
you're
is.
not going to be harmed.
Mr. Fritz Scald, remember, the book is dedicated to him. Let's go back to him. When he saw me, when I went to see him from that UFO crash, I went to see him, and he was out there doing something. He's a big man, big guy, mayor of Marfa. I walked up and I yelled at him, "Hey, Fritz," I got out of the car and started walking right to him. He turned around and saw me, dropped his hoe, he grabbed me and beat me up. And it was a stucco building where the old hangar was. He was slamming against that stucco and slamming me like a piece of meat. And I was screaming at him like, "What is wrong with you, Fritz?" My mom and dad, well, he wouldn't no more listen to me at all. And then finally he put his face in my face and said, "Are you one of those Wright-Patterson Air Force pilots?" I said, "For heaven's sakes, Fritz, I'm Coast Guard. And here's my hat. How can you not read Coast Guard?" Oh, he was livid. It hurt. It really, God, man, I couldn't, I was petrified of this guy. He slammed me down. Then he starts walking back into it's an old World War II adobe building. So I followed him. I'm mad. I want to know. I said, "Hey, Fritz, I only have 3 questions and I'll leave." So he goes in the building. I'm right behind him. And he turns around real quick and slams the door and has all these bolts. There should be a movie on this. It's really incredible. He's bolted an old adobe building. He's bolting the door. A World War II door. He pulls the curtain down. There ain't nobody within 20 miles of us out there. So, and then he had an old World War II desk that he never threw away. It must have been his. And he had an old chair, World War II. And then it had a little window there, so he pulled the blind on that. Now it's dark in here. But on the corner, the only other thing left in that room was over on the very corner was an old file cabinet with chains on it. And that's all there was in this room. So I'm standing there in the dark. He's sitting in the chair, told quiet. Nobody's talking, with a madman right there, and I'm locked in there with him. After about maybe 15 minutes, which to me was a long time.
Right.
And you hear this. "Okay, question number 1. I mean, this is the mayor talking to me. I mean, like I'm a piece of dirt. I said, "Well, Fritz," I'm really careful. "Fritz, is it possible there's more?" And by the way, my dad worked with Fritz way back in 46 in 50, when the Army was always triangulating those lights to find out what they were. Dad helped Fritz put sacks of lime in the plane, and they would fly around, and when the military said drop, they would triangulate and drop, and then Sourceless University was the #1 geology school in the world, and they'd go out there and they'd check everything out. They got a big library about how they found everything. But anyway, so Fritz knew my father very well. So here he is beating up his son. So I asked the question, is there more to the lights than you have revealed to the public? 5-10 minutes in the dark. Question number 2. He never answered the first one. So I said, "Fritz," now I knew this answer to this one, because I told him about the book that I read, UFOs, Threat, and Security, and who else are. He knew all about it. I said, "Fritz, is it true? Could it be," I didn't it's true, "could it be that every time a bomber took off out there," which they didn't have that many, they're mostly training planes, but they had bombers too, B-25s. And anyway, and I said, when these bombers took off, or the trainers, did the lights ever come out of the ground and fly with them? He answered it immediately. He said, "Rarely did they not come right out of the ground and go right in the plane and fly with them wherever they went. When they landed, they go back in the ground, right there on the runways."
Wow.
And the reason they shut the base down is because they started getting into the hangars, into the electronics, and they said, "Shut it down." That base should never have been shut down. It's the best flying base in the world. The pilots got more flying hours there than anywhere on the planet, and they shut it down. Do you realize how important it is as a military pilot to get hours?
Right.
You need hours. So anyway, so I had a third question coming up, and I didn't say anything. And finally he says, "Okay, what's the third question?" He knew that it was going to be a humdinger. And I knew it was going to be a humdinger now, because I remember what happened to me when I was 14 out here. And I didn't know when to say what I found on the internet, what the Library of Congress said. I didn't want to say that word. So I just said to him, "Are these supernatural lights?" He blew up, flew out of that chair. He grabbed me and put his fist in my face, and this guy, he was so mad. He said, "You better be blankety blank careful who you ask that question to, and especially me." Now, especially him. Well, I didn't know what especially him was till a few minutes after that. So here's what happened. He let me go. He walked over to that file cabinet. He took all the and this is in the dark. I can see it a little bit. He takes it off. He reaches down and opens up the bottom drawer. Now, he's a big old dude. You know, I do some serious reaching down there. And then he stands and he looks over that drawer. He bends over, looks in the drawer, and he crosses his arms, and he just sits there for, this time, about 20 minutes. And the only thing he said during that 20 minutes was, I've been waiting to burn these. I've been wanting to burn this for all these years. But he didn't. He reached down in there and eventually took out a leather pouch wrapped with all his research he did since 1946 with Stan Redding. He walked over to me and he slammed him in my stomach. And he bent down and looked at me and he said, if you tell anybody where you got this, I'll call you a GD liar. And he walked out, never saw him again. He died in 2004.
Wow.
So when I moved back here, I wrote this book. And his wife was still alive. She had 2 daughters. So I said, you know, Peggy, I can't publish this unless I get her permission because it's her husband. It's only right. Now, that makes sense to me.
Right.
So I went to see her. Her name was Georgie. I said, Georgie, look, I have a book here. I wrote your husband. I'm dedicating it to your husband. So I want you to read it. And if it offends you or your daughters, please tell me and I will not publish it. So I gave her a week. They called me before the week was over. Say, hey, get over here. She got her $2 from wherever they're living in Arizona or whatever. They come over. And they're sitting down there. And the daughter is speaking. And I said, hold on just a second. Can I just hear it from your mother? And they were real sweet. And the mother said, you have my permission. You have my permission. And so I knew her for a few years before she passed. But I asked her. I said, now look, did he ever talk to you about what he was doing out there with Stan Redding? She said, well, she didn't know about Stan Redding. And I said, well, anything? She said, well, he came home one night. Because he was gone all the nights. And he was laughing. She said, what did you see out there? Oh, nothing but flying saucers. And he just walked off. He never told her anything. But the second time, and the only other time he talked, she said, one night, it was later on, he came in and he was upset. There you go. He was very, very upset. But it's something that really stirred his soul. And he looked at her and he shook his finger at her. He says, I don't want to see you or my daughters ever out there at that airfield. And that's what, out of total anger. And she never understood why he was so angry because I guess he wasn't like that. And his daughters still don't this day believe that he beat me up, but he sure did. So anyway, and then a few years later, I get a phone call. When she died, they shut the house. It's locked it up. Then I guess they decided they're going to rent it. And but the daughters called me and said, listen, we're going to rent this house out. And we locked our father's house. He had an office in the back. It's been locked since his death. And but we want to clean it up. We thought maybe you'd like to go in there first because he has a library. You can go through all his books if you want, and maybe you can find something. I said, I'll be there in a minute. So I went down there and they were with me. And every time I opened up a book, something would fall out, like an old World War II picture of something or the air base out there. And I said, oh, you better keep this. Oh, you can have that. But I did record it. Thank God I recorded everything in here. What happened was this guy, Ed Myers, he found this book, and it's about mystery stories of West Texas. And in there was the Marfa Lights. And he sent it to him and said, would you go through here and tell me if any of this is true? And he took it and he annotated all through there. Boy, it's good. And it tells you what happened. So he quit going out there before I met him because something happened to him. And he told me, this answers one of your questions. He told me, he says, Kim, he said, don't ever go out there and look at those lights. Don't go looking for those lights. He's screaming at me. He said, because if you do, they'll never leave you alone once they know who you are. And they'll know you instantly.
And that's why Kim doesn't like to go back to the mountain.
Even Mike Shirley makes fun of me. He says, every time you show up, things happen. And that old man in that car, that old man that said, I know why they came, because they know you're from Marfa. Well, I don't doubt they do, because they probably knew me real well. So, because they were probably in that craft that came up that night when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
Because that thing was huge, and these guys are huge. Now, the Jews, they talk all about these creatures, though. That's what's amazing. According to the Jews, you have the universe, and then you have many galaxies, and galaxies have planetary systems.
Okay.
And those planets have spheres about them, and inside those spheres they have firmaments. Okay, so here's the moon, here's the earth. Both have a sphere about it, but they're right next to each other, according to the Jews. And where did the Jews get this from? God told them. They wrote it all down, the sages. And everything they write in that Torah, anything of science that we know about today, it's already in the Torah. They have never found anything that the Torah doesn't already know. And I've got a book up here that will blow your mind away what the scientists found out about what I'm talking about. It's phenomenal what the things I have in this house.
Okay, now explain the firmament.
Okay, here we go. People say, oh, these creatures, they're from way out in space. These galaxies have been here forever. You know, we're just not as smart as them. Like, it's all baloney. God created these evil creatures, the bug-eyed ones, the lizards, and all those guys. He made them, and the Jews don't know why he did. Enoch talks all about them in the book of Enoch.
Right.
All of them. And where do they live? They live they're in the sphere of the moon. That's where they live. But no, it's not where they live. That's what their sphere is. Now, these are demonic creatures. They can go anywhere they want to go. But their home is the core of the earth. That is their home. Admiral Byrd, if you haven't seen his videos back after World War II when they went out there to get those, go look at his videos. You'll see the videos. So anyway.
I've heard a lot about Admiral Byrd. And the hollow earth theory comes from some of this.
Well, that's what the Jews say.
Yes.
That's what the Jews say. However, here is the most fascinating part about it all. God created another type of creature, and it's half human and half angel, not demonic.
Nephilim.
No.
No.
Had nothing to do with Nephilim. They're called the Shades. They have many names, but the Jews call them. In the Torah, they're everywhere. In the Psalms, they're there. Christians, there's no such thing. They don't have it all there because they don't know anything about it. So they're there.
Okay, correct me on another point. The Torah is not the Old Testament. I've always been under the impression that the Torah and the Old Testament.
Boy, now you're getting into something that's really going to get me in trouble. So let me tell you it anyway, because I like getting in trouble.
Okay. So that way there I can get in trouble too.
This is very important, what you just asked. The Old Testament is a corrupt edition of the Torah, absolutely corrupted by Christians.
Okay.
They did everything they could to put Paul's Jesus, not the Apostle Jesus. They're two different Jesus. I don't know if you even know that.
Tell me a story.
Well, that will take too long.
Okay, we'll talk about.
You know, I've got a book. I'm writing on it, and when I finish it, leave me an address. I'll mail you the first copy.
Okay.
But okay. Okay, so just remember, when you're reading the Old Testament, it was written by Christians. Now, they'll copy the Torah the best they could, but then they erase things and put, instead of past tense, they'll change it to present tense or future. You're not allowed to, Deuteronomy 5, you're not allowed to alter anything in the Scriptures. The only Scriptures that existed was 5 books of Torah when God said that. He didn't say nothing about there was no New Testament. There is no such thing. There's no such thing as any other sacred documents. Only the one you can't copy, you can't alter, is the Torah. And Paul altered it all the time. And he lied and lied. You ought to read the Dead Sea Scrolls. We can't get into this. But if you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Catholics had it for 44 years. The Vatican did. And they gave it to them. Said, we're fighting these Arabs. They're trying to survive Israel. Will you please document everything and write it out and get all these great men all over the world that can do that? Guess what? They didn't get any Jews. And none of them had any ancient history about writing. Only the Jews had it, but they didn't give it to them. So finally, the Jews, since they wouldn't tell what was in there, they took their scrolls back in 1991. And somebody anonymously in the Vatican organization that were involved, I'm not going to mention any names, they sent them all the photographs. Nobody can say we didn't take any. Well, somebody sent it to them anyway. But they got all the stuff, and boy, what they found out was all about what Paul did to the apostles and the original Jesus and everything. Paul was horrible. And but I already knew it all because I found it all in the New Testament. How come anybody else can't find it? It's right there what he did. So, but anyway, so yeah, the Old Testament, we're talking about the original Torah. But you see those yellow books up there?
Right.
They were written by every sage, starting with Noah to the last prophet. Everything that ever happened to a Jew is right there. They're the greatest set of commentaries you'll ever have. In the Jewish world, you have the Torah, you have the Zohar, the book of mystery, the Kabbalah, if you will. But see, that Kabbalah was by Abraham, and it was called classical Kabbalah, not the theoretical Kabbalah we have today that Christians made up. So you got to be very careful what you're studying when you do the Kabbalah. And then the next thing is that commentary. That's how important that is to a Jew. Even the Jews, the great rabbis say the Zohar, very few people can understand that, and they don't like the mysticism because it's hard to understand. Well, if Abraham could understand it, well, what's the problem? But anyway, remind me to tell you what happened. I wrote a book in there.
Okay.
I wrote a book. I'm a mathematician by trade. She tried for years. Well, first of all, I started reading the Torah a long time ago when she got me involved. I immediately, I don't know if she can remember, I came and said, Peggy, guess what? I found a language in the Bible that no one knows about. Even the rabbis in Israel don't even know this language is in there, and they're God's chosen people. Well, that's fine. God does his own thing. I said, but Peggy, this is a language, and I'm a mathematician, and I've never seen this language before. And Abraham's the one who told us what the name of this language was. He called it arithmetic. What we have today in mathematics is called higher arithmetic. And I knew why they called it higher, and I never liked it. They say man's thoughts are higher than God's. And he's talking about Isaiah, where God said, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts, but not mathematicians. They say their ways are higher than God. I've got many, 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 many documents in my book where they say it. So, and it aggravates me. So are you into gematria? Never. This has nothing to do with gematria. This is a literal language.
Okay.
A literal language. Now, here's the deal. She tried for years to get me to read the Zohar. See, women, according to the Jews, women's the ones that are spiritually minded. And when a man marries a girl, that's the greatest blessing of his life. These poor souls that leave their families, the knuckleheads. When they marry a woman, that was his soulmate from birth. It was split, just like Adam and Eve. And then she comes back and finds him and marries him. And these two become one. That's what the Bible says. But what happens when they become one? Ezekiel, I'm just going to say, Ezekiel 24, 15, and 16 tells you the most precious thing God ever created on this earth is a young girl. And when that young girl finds that man and marries him, he finds out real quick why she's so precious. Because from then on, his prayers are answered through her. Without that woman, we're gone. We're lost. And if a Jew, an Orthodox Jew, never marries a man, he never sees the kingdom of God when he dies. That's how important it is to find that woman, and she finds you. Where do you think you get soulmate from? You got it from Adam. We've been using that language all since this time, soulmate. We never threw that away. So, but no one ever knows what a soulmate is. Well, that's what a soulmate is. And but the girls are the precious ones. They're the most precious thing. So, but Gentiles, we're not under those laws. We're not like that at all. That's a whole different world. I can tell you, it's fascinating what I've learned in all this stuff. And I never hear anybody talk about this ever. But
we're going to discuss this.
Okay, here we go.
After
so let's see. So where were we? We had the ranch, right, and all the stuff we were seeing out there. Why did I quit? I was telling Mike Shirley. I told Mike, I said, Mike, this scaring the people so much out here, and I'm getting scared myself. I mean, these things have no problem coming right up to the mountain. And some of them are a lot smaller, but they go over they come right up to the people's vans while they're Suburbans, and they get in them, and they just fly all over them. I mean, it's unbelievable what happens out there. So, but those are small ones. It's the big ones I don't like. And the coyotes out there go nuts when they pop up. They go screaming all over the place. So, and Michael was out there one night. I was at the viewing site because I don't go out there anymore. I was at the viewing site, and here's 25 miles away. And all of a sudden, things started happening out there at the viewing site. And I told the lady, I was doing a tour, I said, listen, I wonder if Mike Shirley's out there, because all we see is domes and a massive red light. Says, man, when you see that, and all the people that were going crazy when they saw that red light, it was big. And I said, I got on the phone, called Michael. He was out there with his engineers out there. I said, Michael, do y'all see that? He says, two big domes and a red. I said, yes. He bought a laser. And he turned his laser on, and whoop, we saw, he was pointing, and all the people heard me talking on the phone, so they started coming. I said, Michael, what is that? He says, my new laser. And he turned it, and whoop, he turned it on and hit me right there with that laser, 25 miles away. He knows exactly where the viewing site is, but what is his chances of hitting me in the chest with a laser? The people went crazy at that viewing site. Absolutely insane. And I said, Michael, turn that thing off. So anyway, here's what he did with that laser. This first night with these engineers and these NASA guys, everybody, they were from, by the way, they're from Europe also. He's standing there, and a big light, one of those big lights. He turned his laser on. Now that's 30, maybe 28 miles away, and I don't know what kind of laser he had, but he turned it on, and it turned the same color, green. It just, boom, instantly green. But it was growing and growing and growing, and everyone was standing there. So he turned it off, and he said, I'm going to try something. He turned it on again, and he went dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, dot, dot. It Morse coded back to them, and they started screaming, these men. Said, you got to be kidding me. And one of them grabbed that laser, and he turned it on that. He wanted to see how big it was going to get. It got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then boom, it's gone. No more light. I'm telling you, you just can't imagine what goes on out there. Okay, so I'm out there. I tell Mike, I'm not coming anymore. This is it. Well, that was before this happened. And I said, I'm not coming. I said, I'll go during the day to visit and everything, but I'm not taking people out there anymore. So here's what happened. There was 39. We have the names of these people because they had to sign stuff. He wouldn't let them out there as they signed. So 39-year-old couple. I think they were 39. A man and a wife. Bucket list. 8 months they waited. They got here, and I took them out, and it was overcast, and it was cold. You're over a mile high. It's cold out there, and they were totally disappointed. You couldn't even see the mountains. It was right on top of us. It was because we're way up there, and disappointed. And here's Mike Shirley standing next to his truck, and I was on the hood with binoculars trying to see something, and they were about maybe I'm going to guess 40 feet away from us on Big Mountain, and they, Mr. Armory, we want to go home. So I said, okay. Mike said, no, hold on. He's heavy set now. And he's waddling into his truck trying to get over to the glove compartment to get his Airbnb stuff out. While he's there, boom, the entire mountain lights up. The same light that hit my truck a long time ago. I could see Marfa crystal clear, but it lit up the entire top of that mountain. Not more than 40 feet above us was a huge flying saucer, a disc. It lit up the entire mountain. It was there the whole time. You couldn't even see it till you turned the lights on. But before I could do or say anything, it sent a 2-inch beam out of the center of that thing and hit that girl on top of the head, and then turned off and hit him on top of the head. Turned them both into light bulbs. I mean, they were light bulbs, and I could see all the way to Marfa. That's how much power those two people had inside them. And then it just turned its lights off and gone. It's turned on long enough to zap those two people and then gone. And they didn't have a prayer of a chance to look up and see anything. It just zapped them. And by the way, when that light hit them, it bounced off and went 38 miles until it hit the mountains over there, and it didn't diffuse. So
how did it do to them?
Oh, well, they were on another planet. They got in the car. They never talked to me. They were talking the whole time out, and no, not a word. All the way back to Marfa. They parked at a motel over there. The car was there. So I stopped, and she jumped. They both bolted out of the car. He ran back, and he owed me money to take him out. So he took the money and threw it at me. And he got in his car, and they drove off. Now, they called Michael from San Antonio the next day. Like I say, he poo-poos things. He won't tell me what happened. He said they were mad at him. You know, I don't know if they were threatening or what they were going. I have no idea what happened.
Why would they be mad? They asked for it.
Well, they were mad at me, and I didn't do anything.
But it didn't injure them.
No, not that I know of.
They asked for it.
I just didn't want anybody to get. I never dreamt of someone, if I took somebody out there, something would happen to them. That's it. I quit. And
Wow.
and see, Michael he didn't blame me, but he knows that that these things come when I'm there. So I figured Fritz's call was right. He said, stay away from them because I'll never forget you. And so I don't know.
Okay, and now I got another question. Let's go backwards. You were talking about the reptilians and that kind of stuff
Yeah.
that live in the center of the earth.
Yeah.
Okay, and is there there's portals here in the Marfa? Well, I know they're all over the world, I guess, but these crafts are subterranean. Does the earth open when they come out, or just how does that work?
I have no idea. I honestly don't know. I told you everything I know. I've never seen any earth open up or anything come out. All I've seen is these things here. I've seen them, and they go right into the ground, and then they're gone. They go right. Wow. They go right into the airplanes, and these airplanes, they got skin on them. How do they get in there? How do they go through the buses?
Okay.
How do they go through cars? They go right through them. Now, there's one lady who sent me this picture. It's in the book when you get it. Hold
okay.
on.
This story is a blow your mind story, and it's really true.
It's kind of like my mind is blown for the last hour and a half. So let's get on with this story if it's gonna take me even further.
After I'm finished this, I want you to go take a nap. Okay, calm down. Okay, here we go. So, this lady, she's a doctor. She lives in
She's a PhD.
PhD, and she lives in Guatemala.
She lives in
Guatemala.
Mexico, over by Chichen Itza.
Okay, by Chichen Itza. And her mother lives here. And I know her very well. So here's the deal. On her way, years ago, before this, she was coming to visit her mother, and she saw some lights out there. So she stopped. And
Marfa? Okay, where?
She stopped at the viewing site. They have telescopes there. So she got on one telescope because the light was pretty close. So she got on the telescope and saw it crystal clear. She said she saw a big sphere, and in the center of it was a silver ball spinning. So she saw this silver ball inside that. So, but that's all she saw. Well, until 2.5 years ago. About 15 years ago, when she lived here, she had a daughter, 10-year-old. They went out there to the viewing site, and there was a bunch of Cub Scouts out there, and they didn't see anything. So she asked if she could have the scouts come around and take a picture. She did. Okay. She put it on her computer. It was Windows 7 back then. 2 years ago.
And where was this picture taken?
I'm sorry?
Where was this picture taken?
At the viewing site here in Marfa.
The viewing site outside of
Yeah,
Marfa.
we're right there where the base is.
Right.
Where the lights were.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, don't remember, if I didn't tell you, since we do have the largest volcano and we have more fresh water here than anywhere, these lights all over the world only appear where there's fresh water and sulfur. We got more fresh water than anybody. We got more sulfur than anybody right here.
Really?
That's what we have, and that's why they're here.
Now, when he's talking about the Marfa viewing site, it's probably 10, 15 miles outside of town.
Yes.
And it's a really nice building.
Beautiful viewing site.
I'm amazed. We just drove to Alpine from Marfa. On the way back, we were commenting that this building is a good-sized building. It's probably 10,000 square feet, plus it's got a patio all the way around it, and it looks like it has...
Picnic tables all around that.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
It's a really neat place. You can't miss it if you're going between Marfa and Alpine.
Ross Perot, who is a very wealthy man here in Marfa, in Texas, he gave that land to Texas, and Texas built that unit back in the early 60s. So it's been here a while.
Wow.
But it butts up right to the air base, and you're not allowed to... 8 years ago when I moved back, an old man who flew out there when he was a young man, he brought his wife here, and he wanted to go and jump the fence, and they told him you can't do that, but there's a road that goes behind it. He drove that road. Peggy, when you get out there and see what that is? He drove around, and they both, somehow, these old people got over the cattle guard. They didn't even make it 50 yards, and zap, $5,000 fine that old man had to pay. He had the sheriff of Marfa, 16 miles from here, got him, Border Patrol got him, and the DPS. They all nailed him because it's full of sensors out there. They don't want anybody out there.
Okay.
So be careful.
And so the Air Force still owns that area?
No, it's privately owned by a New York lawyer right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I've called him, and he won't let anybody go out there.
Okay.
So that lady, the lady from Guatemala who took that picture of her daughter back 15 years ago, 2 years ago, she went to her computer whiz, and he said, I want you to transfer all my photos to a Windows 10 because this is all computers. So he did, professional. He called her and said, get down here right now. So she ran down there and says, did you take this picture? She said, of course I did. And she said, were these creatures in there? She screamed and said, no, they weren't in there. How did they get in there? And he said, hey, don't look at me. I didn't do this. He said, this is something very peculiar. He took the disk, a Windows 10. He pulled it out, and he had a Windows 7. He stuck it in. They're not there. The same disk. And
really?
She brought that and gave it to me, and I took it to my computer guy. He immediately said, oh, that's Photoshop. She got mad. She grabbed that disk out of his computer and said, you have a Windows 7? So he got an old computer, put it out there, turned it on, they put it in there, and they're not there. And he said, this can't be. But they're there.
Are they the same kind of beings that you had seen, the 7-foot tall, thin?
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
Okay.
This is the only other time I've ever seen these creatures in any UFO book ever written. There they are. Those looked exactly like the three guys that came to me. And one of them is standing on the other side of that rock wall, and that rock wall is about that high on me. And look how tall they are. Look how tall they are. There's three of them, one behind this guy.
Wow.
Those are the same ones. Now, you guys listen to this. You need to get this book. They do.
Oh, this book and the other ones. Wow.
That's the only photograph of those creatures here in Marfa. But they're the ones the Air Force said don't exist. They certainly weren't on the base when they came and took me out of the base. I mean, it's not like I didn't see them. Not like they didn't drive me in that car. And then, like I say, I challenge anybody to go to Houston, go to that Air Force base, get in your car, drive for 3 minutes, and then jump out and see if Houston disappeared and the Air Force base is gone. Well, it did. And we never could find that building. So anyway, she gave me that, and I looked at it, I said, I just can't believe it. Of all the you creatures you're talking about, there they are. And I'm telling you, the shades, these are shades. I'm convinced of it, because after reading those books, here's what the shades did to the Jews. Remember, they're half human and half shades. They have wives, they have children, they eat like we do, they live and die like we do. And but the angelic part, they can travel anywhere instantly. They can do whatever they want. They can shapeshift. They can do all the stuff the evil ones can do. But why are they the only ones it's in the Torah? How come none of the other ones are in there? Because they're evil. But these, I challenge y'all to search what happened to King Solomon. What happened to him in the shades. So it's absolutely incredible. So the Jews know the shades very well. So anyway, but what I'm telling you, everything in this book, there's nobody in the military who knows this happens. They know nothing because they're not spiritual people. They can't be. What I saw in that building was those pictures on the wall. There's no way NASA is. So
I am totally blown away here and excited to continue our conversation in other ways. I always finish out my podcast by saying the world is full of wonder. I have no idea the wonder here. I am blown away. People need to get out and explore. Come to the visitor site, look at the Marfa Lights, see for yourselves, and have an absolutely wonder-filled day.
All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?